Joining me now is former Deputy National Security Advisor and Assistant Secretary of the Treasury in the George W. Bush administration and author of The Treasury's War, The Unleashing of a New Era of Financial Warfare. Juan Zarate is with us. Also, former Pentagon spokesman, retired Navy Commander J.D. Gordon. Thank you both, gentlemen, for being here. J.D., I'm going to start with you because Russia has a long history of conducting drills and exercises all around a particular area, and then those exercises just end up becoming a real operation. Do you think what we're seeing is not just a drill, but the precursor to a full-scale invasion by Russia?
Governor, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Well, I think that Vladimir Putin is trying to reconstitute a Russian empire. We have to realize that in 2005, he said that the greatest geopolitical crisis of the 20th century was the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So I think he's trying to reconstitute it right now for multiple reasons. First, because he can. He sees Barack Obama as a weak and ineffective leader. He sees our European allies as weak and ineffective as well. That's number one. Number two, I think he feels he has to, because Russia is actually fading. 20 years ago, Russia was 148 million people. Today, it's 143 million, so it's shrinking. And if you look at the south part of Russia, in the breakaway republics of Chechnya, Dagestan, Ingushetia, the Muslim areas, that's 20% of Russia. But they're having a lot more children than they are in Moscow and around Russia. So if the demographics continue, Russia could be a Muslim-majority country by 2050. Vladimir Putin realizes that, and it scares him to death. That's why he invaded Georgia, and he still has two provinces, South Ossetia, Abkhazia. That's why he's annexed Crimea, part of the Ukraine, and he could go after the Baltic states next in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. I talked to the Latvia ambassador in Washington a couple weeks ago. He told me that 20% of Latvia are native Russian speakers, so there could be unrest there too.
Juan, I want to ask you about the economic sanctions that have been put into place. How effective are they? How stringent are they? It appears that the Russians are laughing at what we're doing and not even taking it seriously. Is that bluster, or are they really just not that impressed with what we've done so far?
Well, Governor, thanks for having me on tonight. I think the Russians are waiting for the next stages of the economic pressure. I think the initial stages have been meek, and I think we've overstated what the potential impact will be. And I think the reality is that the economic pressure that we can place, which can be enormous and can actually bite on the Russians, won't roll back the military presence in Crimea and certainly won't deter short-term what Putin plans to do. But the reality is we can bite them. We can impose significant costs on the economy. We can unplug their banks. We can target their kleptocrats and their oligarchs. We have a suite of sanctions and authorities that don't require UN mandate that we can apply. And frankly, this new era of financial warfare post 9/11 allows the U.S. to use its economic might, the power of the dollar, the power of U.S. capital markets to really begin to unplug targets like Russian banks from the system. And that ultimately will hurt. And I think the one thing that the Russians aren't poo-pooing so much now, Governor, is the naming of the bank that President Obama named this past week, Bank Rossiya, which is the 17th largest bank in Russia. It has now been cut off from the Western banking system, and it's starting to form complications for the Russians. And so long-term, we can absolutely make it hurt. The problem is it's not going to bring down the Russian flags over Crimea.
How much impact would it have if the United States were in a position where it could export energy to Europe and make that market less secure for Russia?
Well, I think that's part of the calculus, without a doubt. And I think part of this is making clear to not just Vladimir Putin, but the oligarchs around him, a number of about 400 or so who are not only dependent on his power, but also use their influence for economic influence as well, that their long-term interests really are at stake here, that they can be as adventurous as they want in Ukraine and potentially threaten the Baltics. But at the end of the day, they're going to be unplugged. And part of this is that their power over gas and oil in Europe is going to be put at risk. Part of that is then our ability to export more into the market, to create the infrastructure that would allow that, and then to begin to target the elements of the Russian economy that can be isolated. And I think that's part of a longer-term play here where you could say to Putin, this is really not in your interest, and it's really going to hurt long-term.
Juan, I appreciate it. J.D., I'm out of time, but I got to ask you a yes or no question. Do you anticipate Vladimir Putin is going to move those troops into the Ukraine in the next few weeks?
It's very possible, Governor. I think that the eastern third of Ukraine is primarily Russian-speaking, and I think that he could foment some referendums there as well, and actually he could send troops in there. And also, we've got to keep an eye on the Baltic states.
We'll do that. Thank you very much. J.D. Juan, great to have both.